reflect on life, just how, fragile life is. And I'm sure many of you have heard the unfortunate news of the passing of this young man. Life, so much life ahead of him. And it sat with me in a way to where I was like, I want to make sure I do my part in sitting with this, even though it's not, my family, someone I knew personally. I just strive to make time to really try my best to sit with things. And as I began to sit with it, I started to reflect on how maybe earlier this year I was just reminding, men to make sure we tell one another that we love each other, to speak life into each other, because we'll get into the whole, rest in peace, long live this person and that person, but we'll see each other day by day and won't pour love on one another, won't give each other, flowers the way we should. And I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about words, hugs, looking each other in the eyes, supporting one another, bigging each other up, in life. And we want to make sure we're doing our part with the young man who lost, making sure we're saying a prayer for his family, who's mourning. There's so much going on, and grieving like this, we're stronger when we band together. Even the Bible tells us to mourn with people who mourn. So, taking this time to reflect and to pray for him and his family, is my way of mourning with them, even the people I don't know. And what I wanted to also remind us is that to tell each other that we love one another, to not miss the moments that we have to express love and receive love, to compliment one another, to remind one another of who we are and how, talented we are, and, how much we want the best for them and how much we want to help and serve, and all that goes into love, we have to do our part, because we all know how we came into this world. We came, by way of our mother and our fathers, and through our mother's womb, but we don't know how and when we're leaving. We just don't know. That's why it's important when we're having in-person time to put love on each other, to hug, because we don't know. That could be our last moment. When we're texting or when we're talking or when we're on FaceTime, to make sure we're giving that love, to make sure we're letting each other know. And, and specifically the cases like this, to make sure we have a space to where we can communicate what's going on inside, what's going on in here, what we're dealing with. Not being a lone ranger is dangerous. To hold it all in, it's dangerous to let things just get really dark up here. It's not healthy. So let's make sure we do our part, not just give love, but receive love. And even furthermore, to make sure we have a safe space, a community, a pocket of people, or a person that we can get in the pocket with and talk about, not just good things, but also the dark things, the challenging things, that pain. I was just talking to my buddy last week, and I was telling him, because I told a few people that they hadn't seen me in a gym, and I'm like, man, last week was rough for me. For whatever reason, it was just rough emotionally. And I told him, man, after work, I just kind of just sat in the bed and just kind of was in my head, but I should have reached out. I'm like, man, I should have reached out, because I know you would have at least, helped me get to the gym, and that could have helped, or we could have prayed, but I made sure to say, I just have to be better, and we have to be better, so, and I'll leave with this, I really believe that true hope begins and ends with Jesus. This life isn't all, about celebration and good times. It gets hard here. Life is fragile. We're here today and gone tomorrow. The Bible says this life is as a vapor. So it's important that we have a hope outside of ourselves, outside of this life, and that hope begins and ends with Jesus. He gives us hope for today and hope for eternity. Promises for this life and promises for the life to come. And I feel indebted to share that, indebted to not just, tell others that you love them and to receive the love from them, but also to tell you that our hope needs to be in Jesus. It really does. There is no other true and lasting hope. The Bible talks about hope in Jesus. It don't fade, it can't be tainted, and it will never perish. I love that. I love that about that hope. And I just want to say, maybe you don't have a relationship with Jesus, but you can. In Romans, it talks about believing in your heart that the Father sent Jesus and that he was raised from the dead, and confessing with your mouth. And in Acts, it talks about, believing in Jesus, repenting and being baptized. And in the Gospels, it talks about, being a disciple, following Jesus. That's how we get in right standing. That's how we grab hold of this sure hope. And I just want to encourage you, not to just give love and receive love, not to just have a person or people in life that you can talk to about the good, the bad, and the indifferent, but to also have true and lasting eternal hope in Jesus. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. I love y'all. Y'all be blessed. Let's mourn with those who mourn. Let's keep each other in prayer. Let's give love and receive love.